Number 1, the body count is always bigger. Number 2, the death scenes are always much more elaborate. More blood, more gore. Carnage candy. Your core audience just expects it. And number 3, if you want your sequel to become a franchise, never, ever.
Since the 1970s, Hollywood's knack for turning old stories into very new money has dominated the box office and still shows no signs of slowing down. Of course, I'm referring to franchise sequels, something that both divides and unites audiences in our desire to praise the good ones and completely overreact to the bad ones. But the point being made is that subsequent installments to popular movies is something that has existed for decades, and this is especially true for the horror genre, as horror movies tend to have smaller sets and lower budgets, which makes the films faster and cheaper to make. And for as long as sequels have existed, so has the ongoing clash of opinions where some folks think that sequels should be made, albeit made well, and others are wishing that this trend of IP overkill would end.
Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck.
No, wow. Come on, man.
Well, I don't want to speak for everyone, but spoiler alert, I love a good sequel, and I especially love a sequel that knows exactly what it is and what its audiences will think about it, and then completely subverts our expectations while winking right in our faces. And let's be honest, if anyone is going to take on the task of following up the most iconic teen slasher movie of the 90s while building on the original story and setting up interest for more installments, it had to be the man who started it all.
It's kind of a new classic. I think there might be other films like it, where we start commenting on actual films and actual film actors and actresses. I think it's kind of refreshing in a way, because we're really talking about a reality that's very much a part of our reality. Even though they're all sort of franchisable names and everything else, there's nothing harmful about talking about it in a film.
And it was this very concept that helped equip Craven and writer Kevin Williamson with the perfect idea for Scream 2. Using that self-aware meta approach, they would play into all the cliches that audiences have come to expect from sequels. And in today's episode, we are going to look at one of the genre's best follow-up films to figure out why it's awesome and just how classic a sequel can really be. I'm Kier Gomes with JoBlo Horror, and you're watching Deconstructing.
He's not a Nick at Night rerun type of guy. He wants to break some new ground.
Now, this show is all about breaking down what makes a certain movie tick, and not so much a movie review. So, with that being said, I will give a brief description of the plot, and then we'll be breaking down the movie from our 4 key categories. First, we talk about origin, where we discuss a brief history of the film and how it got made. Then we get into legacy, where we talk about some of the movie's most remembered moments that are still in the pop culture canon today. Followed by mystery and trivia, where I'll give you some fun facts about the movie that you can share with your fellow film lovers. And finally, we ended off by talking about the movie's X Factor, where we look at that one special moment that nobody could have accounted for. And believe me when I say, this movie has plenty to deconstruct, and I still have to fit in time for my Justice for Randy rant before the end.
How would you make it different?
I'd let the geek get the girl.
So if you're ready, then keep your backs to the wall, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe for all your favorite horror content. And let's hit play on Scream 2 continues the story of Sidney Prescott as she attempts to put her past behind her and salvage what's left of her life after the events of the first film. When bodies start dropping at her college, Sidney and the remaining survivors, including Dewey, Gail, and Randy, need to work together in order to survive the threat of a new sadistic serial killer donning the mantle of Ghostface. Now, I have some personal takes on why I love this movie, and I'll definitely get into that. But first, let's take a look at the extremely interesting history of Scream 2. Now, if you didn't know, the original Scream 2 script was actually leaked online during the rise of internet popularity, as in the internet itself becoming popular, and the leak revealed the names of the killers and most of the general plot. I think there's a whole video that could be made about this one topic. Oh wait, there is. Make sure you check out our JoBlo Horror Original where we talk about what the f happened to this movie.
It'd be stupid to pull this movie. All this free press, they're gonna have huge numbers this weekend.
With the original plot details now being widely spread through the internet, Kevin Williamson had to rewrite the entire thing, only using some of the original ideas from the script. But you know that old saying in Hollywood, the show must go on. So the movie began production in June of 1997 with only a half of a script to work with while Williamson was finishing the new one. This resulted in more improvised scenes from the cast and more screenplay input from Craven. And to avoid the same situation moving forward, Kevin Williamson wrote a script with 3 very different endings so that if the word did get out, the information and details on the film would likely be incorrect. It wasn't until nearly 20 years later that Kevin Williamson himself admitted that the leaked script was never considered to be the official version. He quotes, "They were worried the killer's identity would be leaked, so we wrote several endings, 3 in all, if memory serves, and when actors and potential crew members asked to read the script, we would send them the script with the dummy ending. There was even a fake ending where Dewey was the killer. They existed as a decoy and nothing more. Extreme measures, but we really wanted to keep the killer's identity a secret." With a makeshift script and a short production schedule, it was time to round up a cast. Neve Campbell was asked to reprise her role for a potential sequel before the movie was even announced. Wes Craven stated that he offered her the part with the pitch that her character would be the only one guaranteed to survive by the end. And seeing how the character of Sidney Prescott is still an important name among iconic final girls, it's safe to say that Craven made a smart move.
Consider it done.
Of course, you don't have a Scream movie without the sinister voice of Roger Jackson as Ghostface, and Dimension even got Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and Jamie Kennedy to return as their characters. Oh yeah, and Cotton Weary, played by Liev Schreiber, had a great part in this movie as well.
Talk to Cotton. He's the man you want to interview. He's the hero.
With a newly minted all-star cast of young actors, a legendary horror director, and a hard working-on-the-fly screenwriter, it was time to roll camera on Scream 2. Now, what do we talk about when we talk about Scream 2? First of all, this movie cemented one element that has remained consistent throughout the entire franchise thus far by introducing Ghostface to be a different killer. Now, up until this point, it was rare to see horror movies that reprise the same protagonist but completely switch out the killers. I mean, look at the slashers before this. Nightmare on Elm Street, always Freddy. Halloween, always Michael Myers. Except for Halloween Ends, I guess. The point is, in the original Scream film, the killers died at the end and 4 of our main characters survived. This movie brings back all the final protagonists and keeps Ghostface as the movie's bad guy, but the identity of Ghostface is never the same across multiple movies. That may not seem like too far of a stretch now, but at the time, it was the entire allure of watching these movies.
Nice twist, huh? Didn't see it coming, did ya?
As Scream was the breakout success of 1996, Scream 2 delivered on following up the best pieces from the original while adding something fresh and new to the saga. Scream 2 was released to theaters in December of 1997, and to no one's surprise, it was a huge hit. The movie was made on an increased budget than the first, obviously, with Miramax giving Craven a budget of $24 million. And the movie finished its box office lifetime with a worldwide total of $172.4 million. And the movie still remains in the top 500 highest grossing US films of all time. Reviews for the movie were also generally favorable, with Rotten Tomatoes showing a strong 82% and praising the movie's meta commentary and fresh story. You know what? Kinda hard to disagree. And I don't know about 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, but I do know that us at JoBlo Horror are 100% Cotton.
So, you a big 100% Cotton fan?
And on a more personal note, I'm still disappointed that they axed my man Randy Meeks in the second act of this movie. While I can ultimately make the case for killing off the most knowledgeable character in the cast is a smart idea for Ghostface, I feel like since we saw Randy laying dead and bloody in the back of that news van, things for Scream could never be quite the same. Sure, I love all the Scream films, and sure, I don't think a 45-year-old movie geek is the missing ingredient from the saga at this point, but I really believe that ever since this moment in Scream 2, the writers of every Scream movie since have been trying to work in a suitable movie buff replacement. Take Kirby or Sam, for example. What I'm really trying to say is that no matter how many brilliant things this movie gives me, I'll always think of Scream 2 as the one where Randy dies. And that's just f***ing tragic.
A lot of shit happens at the movies. People get robbed, shot, maimed, murdered. Multiplex is just a very dangerous place to be these days.
But of course, how can we talk about Scream 2 and the iconic status that it's reached without talking about
Mrs. Loomis? What?
Billy's mother!
Who are we kidding? Did any of you suspect Aunt Jackie from Roseanne to be the mastermind behind these gruesome killings? I sure as hell didn't. Part of the fun of the Scream films is trying to figure out not only who may be wearing the Ghostface mask and killing off the core group, but also trying to predict what kind of outlandish motives they may have. And Scream 2 does a wonderful job of subverting those expectations by giving you a reason to suspect everyone in the group without giving any thought to this small-time Gale Weathers wannabe who is secretly out for blood for her son's killer.
If the killer is repeating what happened in Woodsboro, it's quite possible that the killer could be from Woodsboro. That's all.
But I did make one note on this scene where it would have been cool if at one point during the movie, Sidney maybe saw Debbie Salt and gave like a throwaway line or a look to say like, "Don't I know her?" And that maybe would have given the reveal a little bit more weight in my opinion, especially since the other killer, Mickey, brilliantly played by Timothy Olyphant, is one of the least likely suspects.
No, Billy was a sick fuck who tried to get away with it. Mickey is a sick fuck who wants to get caught. Yeah, see?
And also, can we just appreciate that we still kind of thought Derek was the killer even up to the very last second? So, remember when I said that the original script for the movie was leaked online, which led to a huge rewrite? Well, get this. Turns out Matthew Lillard, who plays Stu Macher, my personal favorite Ghostface, can be seen in an uncredited cameo appearance in Scream 2 as like a partygoer at Sydney's college.
Surprise cameo just for you.
While the character of Stu Macher had been killed in the previous movie, it was revealed in 2009 by Lillard that the original plan for Scream 3 was to have Stu Macher revealed to be alive and the killer behind the events of the second movie. Something that I think we all hope to see at some point in Radio Silence's Scream trilogy. And honestly, for a franchise as meta as this one, why wouldn't they use the original idea for the third movie in a later sequel? I'm just saying.
We're gonna carry on and plan the sequel, because let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.
And speaking of cameos, it's time for a game. Let's see if you can answer this question. Which I Know What You Did Last Summer star played Cece in a supporting role in this film? Was it A, Jennifer Love Hewitt, B, Bridget Wilson, or C, Sarah Michelle Gellar? Comment below if you know the answer.
Do you want to die tonight, Cece?
And now for the big one, the most anticipated, the reason we're all here, the X Factor. So in case I wasn't clear, I love the Scream movies, but when it comes to the X Factor, none of that matters. I'm on the hunt for the one thing that takes this movie from a good sequel to an iconic film of its own merit. I'm looking for something you can't hear about in any old retrospective on the internet. I'm looking for something weird.
It's really weird, isn't it? To think this fuss is all because of you.
Initially, I wanted to use this segment as a way to talk about the story arc and incredible character work. We can see how the trauma and the pain of Scream impacted these once innocent people and how each of them are dealing with that pain differently. Randy hides behind English accents and the escapism of movies, while Sidney will probably never trust a man the same way again. Gale capitalized while Dewey hardened, and Mrs. Loomis masterminded a body count of 10 victims. But can that be the X Factor? I don't think so. It was clearly an intentional point made by Williamson and Craven. And as it was with our last episode, I was just about to throw in the towel and give up on finding the X Factor when all of a sudden it hits me.
Hello?
So the X Factor for the original Scream movie was obviously the opening kill scene with Drew Barrymore. And before I could finish replaying that awesome scene in my head, I realized that the opening kill scene in Scream 2 is probably the most memorable scene in the entire movie. Could it be that the ultimate meta-ness of Scream 2 is that it shares the very same JoBlo horror deconstructing X Factor as the original? Was hiring Jada Pinkett Smith and Omar Epps to be killed in the first scene at a movie theater the perfect way to open a movie that audiences would be seeing for the first time in a movie theater and completely scared the shit out of us? Is it possible that the opening kill scene in Scream 2 is the thing that sets this movie apart? No, not quite.
I hope that was an off-the-cuff remark that holds no subtext whatsoever.
Hold your horses now. Before you go commenting, let me explain. It's not the opening scene as a whole, although I guess it could be. This movie opens up at a movie theater where two students are at the premiere of a movie based on the events of the first movie. Is that too meta?
Star of the Gale Weathers press conference, based on the book by Gale Weathers, soon to be a major motion picture starring Gale Weathers.
They're going to see a movie called Stab, and it's based on a book that Gale Weathers wrote about the Ghostface killings from Scream. The Stab movies and the characters' commentary on them have become kind of a mirror to reflect the Scream franchise fans, but in this movie, it represents the beginning of almost every other killer's motive going forward. Spoilers for the entire Scream franchise, starting now. So, Stab is introduced in Scream 2, and if you look at each killer's motive going forward, the Stab movies play some role in the ultimate motivation. Aside from Roman's motive in Scream 3, which was probably the weakest out of all of them. However, he did do the killings on a Stab set, so it counts. Then you look at Scream 4 with Jill's envy for Sidney's fame as a survivor. That was something that was born with Stab. Scream 5, of course, deals with toxic fandom as two crazed fans of the Stab franchise attempt to inspire a fresh new story. And even Mickey's motive in Scream 2 somewhat matches this theory. The whole "movies made me do it" bit really touches on similar ideas.
Mickey was a good boy, but my God, that whole blame the movies motive. Did you buy that for 1 second?
So no doubt, the Stab movies are indeed the X Factor of Scream 2. At the end of the day, Scream 2 is a great sequel, but it's also a great movie. It's something that I love, and after deconstructing it, I finally understand why.
Did you get that on film?
Yes, I got that on film.
Alright folks, this is where I kick things off to you and ask that you comment your thoughts on Scream 2 down below. Also, please feed the algorithm with your theories on the upcoming Scream 6. We would love to read them. But of course, always remember that stupid people turn back and smart people run. So I'm gonna be smart and run out of here. Good night.
Enjoy. See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya.